Okay. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. It's good enough, so it's better than without video. Everybody can rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Trustee Briggs. Present. Trustee Knighty.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Younger.
Present.
And Trustee Ellis is absent with notice. I apologize, everybody. My voice is pretty strained right now. I've been sick all weekend. I'll do my best to keep my voice up throughout this. If you're in the back rows and you can't hear me well, I would encourage you to move as close as you can. I will try to get through this as best I can. So thank you for your patience. We have the public hearing tonight at 6:15. Requires a real property tax levy in excess of the tax levy defined by the General Municipal Law 3-C. We can start off with the approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Open for discussion. Anybody have any? Okay, all in favor of approval? We jump to petitioners and correspondence. Is anyone here from the Ellenville Softball League? Tracy, they submitted, you don't think it?
Yeah.
Okay. But it's good until next year?
Yes.
Perfect, okay.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Susan, are you tonight? Okay, want to come up? Yeah, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm Susan Picarello. I manage the Ellen Ridge Homeowners Association, and with me tonight is Natalie Levenis. She's the president of the Ellen Ridge HOA, and John Winnick, who is the treasurer. So they've been here in the past too. We've been here a couple of times. We were at the October 15th, 2024 meeting. We were at the September 23rd, 2024 meeting, and then, those 2 meetings, then winter set in. So we thank you first. I want to thank you first for doing some repairs to the roadway and replacing some of the galvanized pipe that has been deteriorating over time in the ground. We know that it's 30 years old, so we thank you first for repairing that. We know that there's one more section of galvanized pipe that needs to be replaced. I think I've mentioned before to you in the past, I know I've sent photos, I've handed you some documentation. One of the homeowners had a lot of water damage at 9 Mount Laurel Lane, and then we know the series of homes, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 Mount Laurel Lane, some of the others have had water damage. So tonight I want to present some photos from 1 Mount Laurel Lane. I actually wrote 3, but it's actually 1, and I can email this as well. But this has been going on actually, so I did more from present to prior. So these are just all the storms that have happened, snow or rain or snow melt that have happened with water damage, mostly in the garage, but there has been some in the basement. But this has been going on for years. So we've been, we trying to be cognizant of, there's a lot going on in the village. We know there's been water leaks and things. We just are here really to find out when things are going to progress and when that last galvanized pipe could actually maybe be replaced. I know there's a lot of work there for the last one. And then there's also roadway paving that needs to be done still, and repair and paving. So we're just kind of hoping that maybe it's budgeted for this season. So we're kind of looking for a schedule on when that might happen.
Where on the regions last?
So it starts on Ellen Ridge Parkway and then it runs through a mulch area, that's on property of Ellen Ridge HOA, and then it comes back out onto Ellen Ridge Parkway, which the village owns. So at the first meeting, I think, if I recall, and I know I have it in my notes, but if I recall correctly, that it was determined and it was stated at one of the meetings that Ellenville is responsible for that last pipe.
I just have a question. So part of it is village owned property, right?
Ellen Ridge Parkway is village owned, yes.
And then part of it is private property.
Correct.
So
I want to look at it.
yeah, I don't know all the particulars about it or where it may be, but are we allowed to go on private property?
I'll pull up the meeting minutes just
Sure.
to clarify for when you last came in.
Right, I think it was the first meeting and maybe September meeting that I came in because the pipe starts and begins on Ellen Ridge
Yeah.
Parkway, which is village property, and then exits on the parkway.
Right, I do remember you being here and it was discussed and Michael Getter, the foreman of the street department, and his crew did go up to do some of the
They've
work.
been great,
Yeah,
just so they've been,
Yeah,
I say every time, they've been great, very responsive.
and I was just, the question to you is, how much of the village responsibility is it, to go on private property?
And our understanding from one of the meetings is that you did discuss it with the village attorney, and it was stated at one of the meetings that it was the village responsibility, so. I certainly remember that, so I'm close to repeating that again, so that happened at one of the meetings. If you could review this and let us know, we would really appreciate it. I don't know if Natalie or John have anything to add, but we're at right now.
Thank you. Everybody, yeah, absolutely, we'll look into it.
Okay.
For the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, is anyone else here to see the board tonight? Could be for any reason, nothing listed. Anyone want to address the board with any matter? Okay. Still got a couple of minutes until the public hearing. So we can move on to sewer. We have a motion authorizing, can I have a motion authorizing spending $35,570 to author sewer plant on recommendation. I did.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. It's about the next, the next motion, the 4,500.
Yeah, that's more detailed that I would like to say one.
Okay.
But yeah, basically what it does is about 1,500 feet, linear feet, from one manhole to Grand Place on Brook Road. Reason why we're doing it, I'm not going into great detail, is it was made mention when EPA came down that it might be, since it was an old landfill, it might be leaching into that pipe and causing our issues.
Got it, okay.
So that's why that was the lowest bid.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm assuming we're still seeing those high readings, which is why the EPA is still on us.
So for the last month, I got this, This time of year is a lot of monitor,
Okay.
so there's no numbers,
Okay,
but I could tell you that if it was numbers, we could tell the moment,
okay,
and you would be,
okay,
so.
okay. Can I have a motion authorizing expenditure?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. It's. Could I have a motion authorizing expenditure of $4,250.13 to Cargill Salt for the item salts treatment on the recommendation of the department foreman?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion authorizing expenditure of $3,996 for water operator coverage from March 6th to March 25th. All in favor? Motion authorizing expenditure of $114.57. Or can I have a motion authorizing expenditure of $114.57 to Dan Pollock for mileage reimbursement for the monthly. So. And this will ask for motion to schedule a workshop to discuss it. Schedule it now. Yep. Have a motion, accepting the resignation of Robert Raymore as fire inspector effective immediately. Thank you. All in favor? And it's still, can I have a motion removing Michael Warren, Karen Gotti? Availability set credit card. Second, all in favor? Aye. Motion reaffirming authorizing Casey Hovis, village treasurer, and Larry Lopez, deputy treasurer, as authorized principal users of the village of Ellenville Visa credit card account.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion authorizing the village treasurer to open an Mountain Money CD on May 1st, 2025 with M&T Bank at $620,000 for 150 days at 3.75% interest maturing on October 27, 2025, with option in case of an emergency. Redemption. That's what we should all be elected officials. We're doing already subsequent term in office for together, having treasurer case office, building inspector Dan Powell, DPW supervisor Mike Jetter, trustee Susan Knight, trustee Samantha Ellis.
Excuse me,
Yep,
what exactly does that mean?
sure. So,
There's a pending motion, you have to second that to discussion.
okay,
Second.
discussion. So it relates to. Yeah, right. So basically, we have to reaffirm the term of office to Nicelers, which is New York State government. Any individual who is receiving any kind of potential income from the state of New York has to. So I'll read the exact letter if that's okay, but I'll butcher it. During a recent review of standard workday and reporting resolutions for elected and appointed officials, we found that there were terms of office that have since expired. So these are appointed positions in many cases, or in our cases, they're elected positions. So we have to reaffirm that actually their terms are active for Nicelers. We're basically passing a resolution, submitting that resolution to Nicelers. And yeah.
So what now?
Sure, so according to Nicelers, they do not have expired terms in the system as reported by Nicelers. So, I can't say why Nicelers is flagging too and why Nicelers is not. I imagine just simply because they're not expired as far as Nicelers is concerned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just sort of a question, in my title, is that the actual title that, the finals of the night, the passing, working?
I would have to check. I'm not familiar with the.
It's a civil service side of it.
Okay, I can certainly look into it. I don't know if there's a difference between what retirement titles and what civil service titles. All in favor? So I'm gonna, can I have a motion opening the public hearing regarding local law number 2 of 2025? Second. All in favor? So as I said earlier, this is a public hearing, for the public to speak to. My comment on the proposed local law number 2 of 2025, which would allow us to levy a tax that is tax levy limit, which is 2%.
Hey everyone. I'm not up here opposing it. I'm just up here to ask if we've done our due diligence in other areas. So I know that trustee Ellis at the last budget meeting mentioned that you guys were gonna look into whether or not we had a agreement with the town, with our court system, with the tickets that the police department issues. So where are we in the status of what, if any, funds the village receives from the criminal tickets that the police department issues?
So a lot of it. Software, the treasurer taking into FCC, email, trustee Ellis.
Also, for like 2024, did we receive any reimbursements from the court system for the tickets? Don't have an answer to that. Okay. So we do not know if we had an agreement, and we do not know if we received any funds for these tickets that were issued. Is that correct?
I think that the proportion is not subject to an agreement. It's determined by the New York State Comptroller based on the proportion of each municipality's contribution to securing the fine, whatever it was. So if the village supplied the police department, the town supplied the court, the comptroller looks at that and then they use their formula and then they assign a value to each municipality. It's not really subject to an agreement.
Is that, so from my understanding, if there was no agreement that was issued or like a contract that was signed, the town has just absorbed the responsibility and has no responsibility for paying the village back. However, I believe, again, I don't know this, I'm looking for confirmation, but our tickets issued through our building department we do receive the money back from those. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so my question is, if we are gonna move forward with increasing our taxes, I think a lot of people here wanna see a better quality of life. We can specifically talk in relation to the buildings around here, the trash, the falafel shop has had trash and it's on 209 for almost a year now. So I'm wondering if the village is prepared to focus more on issuing code violations and building violations for these dilapidated and trashed buildings around here.
Yep.
Because that is the source of income for you guys and can increase the area in which we're living now.
Yeah, so and actually, just to clarify that, because I think it's an important thing, it's quality of life, right? This is everything. There are things that everyone seems to have to deal with, unfortunately, in different neighborhoods, problem house, problem building. And we have made a point over the last 4 to 5 months to really start to emphasize those quality of life, litter tickets. I know what property you're talking about. I know what's going on. It's, would say that one especially is a little bit of a complicated situation because it actually involves two properties, one is in the other. Which one- That's all for first in action, but I think there's a number of people in this audience who know exactly which property on Warren is the problem property. That's actually frankly a couple of them.
Yeah. I think that the building department is doing a great job issuing permits, but we discussed this at the last budget meeting too. They are focusing on the people who are trying to make things better. And they are focusing on the people who pick up their calls instead of the absentee landlords, instead of these trash buildings and properties. So I just hope, I know Dan isn't here tonight, but I hope that moving forward, if we're increasing our taxes, you know, we can listen to the village residents and say, we want you to focus on the people that are making it look.
Sure. You know, what I can do is obviously give it in front of us.
Right.
We redact, you know, the individuals' names on it, and addresses, but I can show at least how many fines have been issued for a lot of these quality of life issues over the last couple of months. Just to kind of emphasize, I know there's a lot of them, and I think that's part of the issue is that Dan could attest if he was here, he gets a lot of text messages from me saying, hey, XYZ, I'm driving by.
2 weeks is one thing, like 12 months is another thing.
I agree,
Yeah.
but sometimes it takes, right now, start an initial action and then work forward. I get it.
And the last question is that, you know, if we are going to be increasing taxes, there is an expectation that we have sufficient staff managing this. What is the village's plan to hire a village manager?
So we have budgeted for it.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just comment too on the building department question, because I think it is important.
Yes.
The way that the justice court currently works is you can either prosecute a fine out or you can enter into a civil settlement.
Yeah.
Those civil settlements do go directly to the village and the defendant pays that directly to the village. If it was a fine assigned, that would get paid to the court and then get sent out to the comptroller's office, which would then get assigned based on whatever value the comptroller assigns to that particular ticket and the services that were provided by each municipality. Now, in terms of the actual steps, if you remember back in, I think it was November, we passed Local Law 3, 2024, which was the whole thing about, if you owe taxes, then you can't apply for a building permit.
Mhm.
Part of that law was establishing that if the absentee landlord, for example, doesn't show up for a building violation in the town court, we can get a civil judgment against them for up to $3,000, which we can then put as a lien on their property, which is obviously aimed at compelling compliance against the landlord. That has still been working, and Judge Deschamps has been seeing, the mechanism behind that. So just give it a little bit of time. He's finally come to the decision that it is allowed pursuant to the general municipal law. So I think that now with these non-adhering landlords, we're going to see a lot more default judgments against them, and we're going to hit them where it hurts in their pocketbook. So we should get rid of the findings.
Yeah, it sounds like our partnership with the courts, the town court system for the building department is successful or is moving
Right.
along successfully. Unknown with our partnership with the police
Understood.
department and the
Understood.
court.
Also, the court is paying out of the A fund of the town budget, which means village taxpayers paying to the A fund. So approximately 1/3 of the cost of the court is covered by village residents.
Oh, yeah, I
So
mean,
sometimes people in town will tell you that it's a town court, but 1/3 is paid by village residents.
correct, but the village residents are paying for the police department.
I understand.
I mean, if we wanted to talk about the redundancies of village residents paying into the A fund of the town and it's a whole other conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment during the public hearing? Scott?
Well, I spoke at the legislature last month and they limited to 2 minutes. I said, it's the first time in my life I ever spoke for 2 minutes, so I had practice. I just want some comments on the tax levy.
Sure.
The mayor spoke, you spoke last time about a number of issues. I can tell you as town supervisor, we live within the 2% tax cap. It's very difficult. It took a lot of meetings,
Took a lot of work from my friend John Gavaris, and but we did it. And there are certain things that I don't know what the village does, but I want to comment on. Employee raises. If you look at raises year to year, if you have to live within a 2% tax cap, then you have to look at employee raises being within that 2%. You just have to. You mentioned the steps of the police. I'm glad the chief's not here because he's my neighbor. He'll kill me for this, but the steps, you mentioned 3-year steps. I was with the state for 33 years. The steps when I retired were 7 years. So maybe that's something contractually that the village needs to look at, stretching those steps out. So it's not a burden where a new police officer reaches top pay in 3 years. To me, that's very fast. The bridge, you mentioned the possibility of bonding and stretching it out. I would suggest you stretch it out a long way, you know, as long as you can. Maybe you could stretch it out for 7 years or 10 years and not, if the cost of the bridge to the village is gonna wipe out the 2% tax cap, then I think we have to look at the cost of that bridge. Not that I don't wanna see that bridge come in. And lastly, my concern, which I shared with the mayor recently, the water and sewer rate was supposed to go up approximately 20%. I know people that had their rates double. And I worry about people on fixed incomes having the water and sewer, and then the possibility of taxes going up from 4.4 to 7%. I don't know how people in Ellenville are gonna sustain under that.
Sure.
So that's my message.
Yeah, and so just to address the water and sewer side of it, I mean, if someone's bill is double, something has to be wrong. Encourage them to contact the
I
office
will.
and look at usage. I think that's the key thing. If they have spike in usage, then we definitely do it. When we look at like actual, because we just completed a quarter, we'll look at actual gallons used for that entire physical structure and then what we build. We're seeing that like 10 to 15% increase. Now, what I would say, one of the surprising things that I saw, and it was actually something that we had to go back and kind of figure out if it was the right number, was that usage was up quite a bit for the winter quarter. And I thought that was surprising because you would figure it's summer. Yeah, exactly. But if you go back a couple of years, it's the same pattern. The winter quarter tends to have higher usage. I don't know if people just take an extra shower or take a longer shower because it's cold or whatever it be, but I'm surprised. It's consistent. Typically this past quarter. Larry?
Not to scold you.
But okay, you are.
No, I'm not, because I get it. I know you don't have a choice, because unlike the town, we've never had a reserve fund. And if we did, it was, I think we had $75,000 one year. That was a boon, and it lasted maybe 90 days, and then we had a snowstorm, and that was the end of that. So I get it. And I also get that when they did the rebound, everybody was happy because assessments in the village went down. The town, a lot of them went up, but on the most part, in the village, and certainly in the business district, your assessments went down. What happens when your assessments went down? The cap came down, okay, you were just that much closer to the limit. And it just put us on a slippery slope for the next 10 years. And I don't see any other way out of it, to be honest, but I'm concerned that what's plan B for the following year? For the 26-27 budget, you know, I mean, last year we had the mountain money. This year we're gonna have to exceed the cap. What about the following year? You know, is there a way out, or are you working on a way out, or are we hoping to get through 1 year at a time and see what happens next year?
Sure. So you know what, that's a really good topic to kind of bring up, you know, and it's right, you know, what are we going to do next, right? That's been a conversation for the last couple of months, especially again. But it's something that, you know, I talked about 18 months ago, something I talked about a year ago, just as we began to pass the budget for this year, is that last year's budget was a disaster, right? We had to go in for the mountain money, you know, 2 months in, you know, here's this massive deficit right there. And then, you know, recognizing that, you know, this is going to be a critical year. All the data going backwards, I would say it's garbage. It's hard to discern exactly what happened completely. You know, as we said before, we have put in a formal request to the comptroller's office to come in and conduct an audit. They have received that. But again, they want They want us to complete our AFRs and AUDs, and we're moving through them. But what I said last year was that this was a critical year because this would be a year of data. To make objective decisions by having data for the first time, 1 full year's worth of data, a budget that got created with the guys that we would get through the budget year on budget. And to get ourselves into a place where this year that we can really have the time to not act defensively, but act proactively to look at what's next, what's next for the village of Allenville. This year's been basically, and it's probably no different than many other years in the past, is every day is a new fire burning. But this year it felt like, there was a forest fire right at the edge of the thing about to wipe out the village. And we had to get through that, and we had to build a budget for this year that's sustainable. What it took to get through this budget year is not sustainable. So, that's the hope here, is that we have 1 year of sustainability so that we can have the time to work through these issues and not have to worry about, well, is it gonna snow this weekend and are we gonna run out of money because of it? And that's the challenge.
And I understand, I know you're watching the pennies, but don't be overly frugal in what you're doing, because if you're not building in something, that rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Come September, October, you're gonna be right back where we are now, so, do it once, do it right. And it's gonna be painful no matter how much it is, so just, it's like ripping off a bandage, just rip it off, done. And at least try and get out of it so that maybe next year you're on a little more solid footing than we go into the 26-27 year.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think, that's again, we're 6 weeks away from the end of the budget year. I would say there's still another 2 weeks worth of great data that we can get as we get into that final 4 weeks or 5 weeks left of the budget year. And we start to look at, okay, can we make X debt payment, to start whittling down those cans and rans at the end of the year. And to your point, that's the goal, is that, this year is a sustainable budget so that you can start looking at those things. Again, we want to get through those AFRs and AUDs so that you can potentially get in front of the financial restructuring board. There's a lot of money available to us to deal with some of these things and to plan for some of these things. But if you're always on the back foot, and if you're always struggling just to stay alive, there's never a moment to say, okay, this is what we gotta do to plan for this.
So my parting comment, there's a lot of municipal talent in this room of people who live in the village. I'm looking at John, I'm looking at Scott, people with years of budget experience.
Sure.
Maybe you could have them form a committee when you get past this, come June, when you're, okay, we get through another year, and let them start looking now for 26, 27 to see, what can be done, or.
So truthfully, I've reached out to the Department of State, who's directly available. This studies. Truthfully, I appreciate all of you who have provided information to me over the last 18 months. So many different community members have been so helpful. I appreciate that. One of the things that I want to do is, some of the things that we potentially talk about are, in the history of the village of Ellenville, dynamic and huge. And they kind of, been discussed before, frankly, as you know, and probably going back 40 to 50 years. I think it would be best, and this is why I want to attack this right on that's out there, is to have, how do I phrase it? It's just a organizational body that does this professionally to come in and really rip it apart and look at it and give us an objective opinion. Maybe cold and calculated, if you will, but this way we can say, right, everybody's got an opinion on the matter. I have an opinion, and I want to remove the idea that there's an opinion layered into something like this. I think that's a critical component. But I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who's offered to help last year. I think that's just an approach, and using the disillusion study from 2009 as the example. When you read the cover letter of it, you can see how it can raise over it. Is that members left halfway through it? There was, informational gathering difficulties. There was, I don't want to say it was a non-determination, but it was effectively, we don't have enough information to make a fully informed decision.
But because you had people who, there was a learning curve. And so that's why I said, you know,
Yeah.
you can do it, you call on people who already have the knowledge and the understanding, they can look at it and understand where it's going, because otherwise you'll be 5 years. But I'm gonna leave, but I just wanna say, you know, you have a great bunch of employees who have been continuing to do their job under these most difficult times, and I hope you appreciate them, because they're really out there doing it regardless, so,
Absolutely.
and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, Mayor.
Margaret?
Question, the way this is worded on here, it says that requires a real property tax levy in excess of the tax levy limit.
Sure.
So my question is, well, do we know how much?
No, so the local, I mean, in regards to adopting this local law do not stipulate the actual percentage. It's basically, we're adopting a law stating simply see ahead of the adopted budget, we'll have the percentage. Speaking of, we need to motion to have another public hearing on April 28th to discuss the budget ahead of adoption. Which will have the defined percentage, but basically, you do not define the percentage. So it's 18%.
And you,
Yep. It's.
I just wanted to make a statement back to the topic of the golf course. And I think in light of the tax levy that now seems unavoidable, of course, that the residents of the village that are gonna be paying these additional taxes are owed more transparency on the golf course budget. I find it very difficult to discern from the copy that's given to us publicly what exactly is what over there. And I also feel this has come up in the past, not been addressed prior to your that there's a committee for the golf course, but they never appear at the village board meetings. And I think that it's only fair that they should report in, just like water does, sewer does, the police do. Why don't, the village is running a golf course business that affects everybody in this room and everybody that lives in the village, and would do more transparency in that respect.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, I know this has come up a couple of times. I ran on it 18 months ago, what is the golf course actually doing? When I got in, I spent about 3 weeks basically pulling bank statements going back about 3 years. Our bookkeeper was probably stripping up a wall by me doing that, but she dug through the files, got everything out, and it's basically, when you have a business, say it's a business, but it functionally is in its own ways, easiest way to look at what is pulling in or what it's not pulling in is basically by bank statements. You go to a cash flow standpoint and say, okay, here's debits, here's credits coming in and out. Where is it going? Are we billing for our employees' time that they spend at it? That was always a point of contention. The treasurer's time, the deputy treasurer's time, various other departments, looking through that to see, A, is it occurring? Does seem to be the case. It certainly is now. And also, what did cash look like? You can pick a point on the calendar and you could say, okay, on September 1st of 2021, here's the balance in the account. It's an isolated account. General fund monies don't transfer into it. General fund monies don't transfer back out of the general fund. So ideally, it's an isolated account where you should be able to very quickly discern where it is at any point in time. And you can start to see patterns over the course of a couple of years. When the village took out the emergency loan a couple of years ago, it's because they had to. There was not enough money in the golf course bank account to make those purchases. They had to take out the loan. And that's why this last year was a pretty critical year for it, because it needed to make a payment on that loan. And it needs to do just more, it needs to actually build up capital for it. And the golf course did have a good year this past year relative to the years prior. It was able to make that payment and it was able to go into the fall and winter months in probably the strongest position that it's been since its inception, or at least pre-COVID. It's definitely being actively monitored. I take into consideration the general support for the referendum that occurred back in 2018 for that purchase. Whether that was with the intention of operating it as a golf course in the long term or not. I mean, it was by far probably the most well-attended referendum we probably had in 15 to 20 years. I think the turnout was like 800 people, which if you've seen some of our other referendums, we get like 150 people. It was overwhelmingly yes. And truthfully, I'm not an avid golfer. I don't really care if the golf course is there or not. But at the same time, I take into consideration, the intention and the will of the people. I was here in 2018. I understood why they were doing it. And I try to take that into account despite my own opinion. I try to be objective with it. Yep. Sandy.
You claimed the last time that's meeting that golf course made $60,000.
Yep. I said
you received a payment for $60,000.
Say that again.
Profit from the golf course, both the village.
Sorry, hold on, I'll get back to you.
I wasn't gonna say anything, I just wanted to come and listen to see what actually was going on, but the golf course is the bottom, guys. We need more things like the golf course. What the problem is that the business failed, the model failed, and we all know that, right? And I wanna say thank you to each and one of you, every you guys, for working your due diligence. You're actually trying to make a difference, and it means something to me. Who pays taxes in the village and has a business here. With that being said, we're in a position, and everybody needs to hear this. We're all in a position, okay? Infrastructure's failed, okay? Mike Jerry does a great job, comes around and does what he can. We bring in outside contractors with cameras and this and that. Look, it's old. The village is old, okay? We have no new money per se moving in. We have a great view here, right? We have a nice street, Canal Street, we have new restaurants, people wanna come and hang out, like it's a good scene. Okay, we need new money to come in to help the situation. You can't put these old people out of their houses, bud. And I know you're trying and everybody here is trying, right? We have to figure out a solution that can work for everybody. Okay? I'm a business owner, I'm struggling right now, okay? I try to get out of my parking lot, right? This is my own personal vendetta this morning. I can't because there's a parked truck on the village road. Now, I'm not gonna be an asshole and call anybody, but at the same time, look, I'm trying to go to work and I can't get out of my shop, and I'm not gonna bother you because you have enough of your own stuff to worry about. But listen, at the end of this, our kids have nothing to do, okay? And after school programs, where are they? Look, everybody can say whatever they want. At the end of the day, we needed to figure out a solution. I liked what Mrs. Shealy had to say, okay? You're putting a mere Band-Aid on what's actually going on, and I get it. That's your job right now. We need to figure out a bigger solution to the problem. And it's not just gonna be saying, hey, put taxes on people. That'll work, because guess what? Half the people in Elmville don't pay their taxes, okay? I know this. Mike did a great job, fixed the water problem. Guess what? There's a puddle of water. Does anybody want to know where the water's coming from? It's our infrastructure, guys. How much salt did we put down on the road? I'm sorry, I'm getting excited now. I seen a bill here for $4,200. That's approved. $4,200. Come on, man. Run it like a tight ship. It's a business, and you guys can't. It's okay. You got dealt a shit show. Okay? I thank you. Because I don't want to be sitting in your position. I don't think anybody here wants to hear that. Or be where you're at. But it's the truth. And everybody needs to know the truth. Enough of the bullshit. The country club belongs. That has to stay. We need things for our kids to do. Okay? We need something outside of all the negative. Look, my wife's a school teacher. She has 7 kids come to school in a day. 7. It's a bigger problem, it's a bigger problem than what you're trying to do here. So, I'm done, thank you.
Hold on, Sandy, just to go back. So just to really, I know you had made a statement about the revenue increase this year related to the golf course, but maybe
Yeah, you said 6,000 last time.
Yeah.
So this went to the village?
I mean, it's in the golf course account.
Okay, so you have like,
It was a net positive increase in revenue.
So just to combine those two
Wait,
statements.
actually, you know what,
Yeah,
just to be sure, just because I want to continue, we're still in the public hearing right now. Does anyone else want to address the board, if they come up to speak to the board? No, it's okay, it's okay. Not great at running meetings, I'll get there eventually.
Is there a question about state aid? I see it's budgeted at 48,000 for 25-26, but it was 74,000 for 24-25. Wondering why it's such a decrease? Is it like a lack of manpower to go after that aid? Is it the prior budgetary issues that are hindering us from getting that? Is
No,
it-
so if you, I guess if we receive like $40,000 small state aid, functionally we receive a $48,000 state aid payment. Going back previously, if you go to some of the other prior years, it was actually dramatically higher.
Right.
$224,000. That was the hangover from COVID.
Okay.
That was the state providing a significant amount of money to small municipalities and anybody and everything. And basically we're back at our normal, this is your typical AIM payment.
But then why was last year 74,000? So I'm looking at adopted budget 24-25 74,000. Tentative budget 25-26 is 48,000.
What page are you looking at to the mayor provided?
It's on page 4. One, this might have been the previous one. Wondering why. Let's see if I can find it in this other one.
Oh, you're looking at the aggregate of state aid. So-
Yeah,
Yeah, so I apologize. So, you know, truthfully, the title is probably not. You have to go work with, check the comptroller's coding title. So
okay.
that's a combination of the mortgage tax and state aid.
Okay.
Between the two. You can see.
Got it. Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay. So there was
Yeah, mortgage tax is where we're getting billed right now. It used to be, I'd say, paid out. It's changed and basically back. It was not in our favor, but in the town's favor.
Okay. Got it. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Cassie?
Listening to this has been very informative, but I think the problem we're gonna run into is that the people who religiously pay their taxes in this town are our retired seniors who have budgeted every penny because it's their normal fiber to pay every bill that's presented to them. So you bust your tax cap and you take it up to 7.8 because you don't have a choice in order to keep the village going. You may actually collect less revenue than you think because our senior citizens can't bear the cost. And now I'm hearing that even some of our businesses are going to have to really decide whether they can continue to function within the village. Can we afford to lose the businesses in the village? I don't think so. Then Mary is always bright. I did the math on the back of a napkin. You're even at your high point, you don't have enough, the Band-Aid's not big enough. You're still gonna be hemorrhaging. So what are we doing here? It sort of feels like kabuki theater. I mean, you're either gonna do more, you're gonna raise your tax cap more in order to build, have a really big Band-Aid to stop the bleeding. Or you're going to cost your seniors who put their budgeted their retirement based on what they could account for. They knew their school taxes were gonna go up, which pretty soon we may not be able to sustain the 2%, say under 2% of the town. It doesn't look that way this year, and probably the next year will be fine as well. But eventually will be. Fire department's gonna bond out a brand new firehouse, that's gonna hit them. And you know what? Seniors don't really care about that. They really do want the fire trucks to show up. But when is enough in the village? When do we say we can't do this anymore? There isn't enough revenue out there that you can put on the backs of your taxpayer to meet the problems this village has. I mean, and then no one likes the word revaluation, nobody. But when I look at my property and then I look at my neighbor's property, let me tell you, it is not equal. And I'm on the low end, I mean extremely low. When I do mine versus Mr. Westbrook's property, it's 50% less. It needs to be done. And I don't know if there's state funding for it. I believe there is. We talked to Renee, there's funding to fund part of the valuation of property taxes. But you're asking way too much of retired seniors in this village. My husband and I will be fine. We'll figure it out. We always do. But we have 2 incomes and our retired seniors are stuck. So I really hope when you sit down to make this vote, you really consider the seniors in this town. Because you're gonna hurt them. They're gonna have no choice. We pay our taxes, we pay our water and sewer, we don't eat, we don't take our meds. Those are all the choices they're gonna have to make. So I wish you luck with your decision, because we're in an ugly place right now. And I thank you for your efforts on the budget.
No. We're losing track of what this public hearing is about. We raise the taxes. I heard what Paul said, he's right. I heard what Tori said, she's exactly right. No one likes seeing, but that's not what we're here for today. We have a problem. We have a severe revenue problem. The village needs money to operate. So it's 2 choices. Do we dissolve the village?
Yes.
Well, that's been brought up before and maybe that might be brought up again. I personally don't think we should dissolve the village. Or do we try to increase a little bit more tax? We need more revenue. We're paying for the sins of the past. We're paying for the sins of past administrations that were either or incompetent, stupid, didn't care. One of or all 3 of those things. We're in the hole right now. We are paying for it. But you know what? We gotta dig out of it. Do we dig a little deeper or do we just let it go? That's the question. Do we save it or do we let it go? Also, the golf course should stay.
Thank you, Roger.
The golf course should stay.
Get the solution. We don't wanna hear the problem.
Yeah, we all know
we have a problem.
is, unfortunately, we have, we talk a lot of problems. We have major infrastructure problems, major water problems, major sewer problems, road problems. Right? That's not gonna fix itself. Right? How are we gonna, we gotta fix it. The water's gotta be fixed. The sewer's gotta be fixed. The building's gotta be fixed. But like I said, we're paying for the sins of the past. I don't wanna pay more taxes. I think, Paul, you said you wanna pay more taxes, so you don't mind, right? Tori, you pay more. That's what you're here for. You wanna pay $4? Sure, why not?
No.
No one wants to.
No, but guess
No
what?
one wants to, but
We need a solution.
do we have to? And I don't think we're not gonna fund this right now. It's either yes or no, we wanna raise the tax cap or not. That's the question, not any other stuff we're talking about. We wanna raise the tax cap, yes or no? That's the question. That's the question on the floor. Tori.
Quickly, I didn't mean to have to get back up here, but if we're keeping the golf course, which I agree, it could be something strategically that's smart for us, we need to We need to, the golf course, the Hunt Building, Village Hall, this building, we need to see how they're operating as businesses and how they're strategically helping the village bring in revenue. And right now, Denise was right, there's not a lot of transparency in what the village or the golf course is giving back to village residents. There's no difference in like their fees versus people from New Jersey. There's no payback for when we use the mountain money to purchase this. So I'm all down for these really awesome business ideas, but we need to run them like successful businesses. Otherwise, dissolve.
Does anybody else like to speak to the board on local law number 2, 2025?
I move to post public hearing.
Second.
So yeah, I want to follow up those comments, you know, again, as a relay.
Thank you.
Okay. Kind of relayed at other meetings, I understand everybody's frustration. How long you been here? Okay. Yeah, so I understand everybody's frustration. Having gone through this budget year, there's nobody else as frustrated as I am. You know, like all of you with here, we have to pay those taxes. I want to clarify though a couple of things because we are on track to finish this budget year on budget. You know, I think we have to be clear on that. You know, this isn't like we're just kind of skating through or shifting money around. And that's frankly with water and sewer running in a deficit as they have over the last number of years, and the general fund having to spot them. So from a pure cash flow standpoint, the general fund is short, but we're still on track to be cash flow neutral closing out the budget year. We're gonna have to address that. We're gonna have to look at what the rollovers look like. But functionally, we did what we said we were gonna do and get through this budget year on budget. We're total expenditures, as I said before in other meetings, at the other couple of meetings, we're down approximately $450,000 this year. You know, it gets to be a place where there hasn't been a tax levy, going over the tax levy hasn't occurred probably, Mary, maybe you could correct me, maybe in 15 to 20 years. You know, objectively looking at you know, where the village budget is and what we need to do to make this year work. You know, I looked at it not in a vacuum of Ellenville, but in the greater sense of what's happening in other municipalities right now. Is it completely insane having to exceed the tax levy limit? It's not something that I want to do, but I also have to say, okay, we have these operating costs right now. You know, I used the village of Montgomery as an example a lot. The last meeting, I didn't have what their proposed tax levy increase is going to be. I did have a number of municipalities. But about 6 days later, they posted theirs. They're going to be 18% over the tax levy limit. This is not isolated to just these spotted municipalities. Probably in the last 4 years, I'd estimate about 80% of all municipalities have exceeded the tax levy limit. And that's the hangover from COVID. Costs have increased dramatically, material costs and labor costs. I agree, Scott, we should always stick to 2% increases on labor contracts. But frankly, there's a limitation to that. As you know, you probably know, we can be dragged to arbitration based on certain salary levels. And you know, those are the things that we find that balance with. You know, I would say generally across the board, the village has stuck to 2%, and in many cases with different departments, less than 2% for a number of different years. You know, it gets to be a place where, you know, as we moved away from the constitutional tax limit, the excuse that we have no money doesn't really fly with the unions anymore. And it's not to demonize them, because at the end of the day, these are people doing work, you know, they have jobs, and inflation has run rampant in the last number of years. And when you receive a 0% or a 1% increase, you know, it just doesn't work. So, you know, what we're trying to do is find a balance so that we can go into this year, at least on a neutral platform, so that we can make decisions and we can make progressive plans to figure out what we're gonna do for the next number of years. That's exactly what I said I was gonna do over the last 18 months. When I debated the former mayor, I said exactly that. I would get up here, I would give it a fair shake, I would rip it apart, and I would look at different parts of the operation and see where we could cut, where we could strip it down, what are base level operating costs, and then where do we go from there and get through the budget year. Obviously, things didn't play out over the first 6 months as I had hoped from a time standpoint, but 12 months ago, right before the budget, this budget year, I laid out what was likely to happen and what we would need to do for this budget year. I think that's what we did. That's why we're on budget this year. And now going into this budget year, we need to operate neutrally so that we can make progressive decisions. We talked about grant money for infrastructure. We left a lot of money on the table because we weren't in a good stable position. That's EFC funding that probably we wouldn't have got because, as I said at the last meeting, I received an email about 3 weeks ago from EFC asking why the village ran deficit budgets on the water and sewer funds and why the general fund ran deficit budgets over the last number of years. So we just can't make ourselves poor for the sake of it because we need millions of dollars on the table. That well that I talked about that we need to refurb, that likely could have been rent money had we planned out for it and really, driven home and we were in a good position. And, that's the kind of things that we can't lose track of is that whatever happens, this still has to exist for a period of time. This just isn't gonna go away. This isn't just gonna, be the end all, and we can't just stop operating because we will need millions of dollars on the table. I have a motion adopting, Mike.
Love this building with all my heart. Born and raised here. There was a quote that was stated on Facebook one time. Maybe people will understand it. Maybe they'll be offended, hopefully they're not. There was a statement that was made that said, us as people, man that was selling eggs, trying to feed his family, we would bargain that person down to get a dozen eggs from a man that struggled to feed his family. But it's easy for us to go to a 5-star restaurant and give these people a big tip in the same community that we live. So everybody can absorb that and understand what I'm saying, what I got from it. But all I'm saying is that this is our village, and we have to do whatever we have to do to make it work. I'm not in agreement with it dissolving. A dissolution never was and it never will be. We fought for this village for years, and I believe that we should continue to fight with it until we truly cannot fight for it.
I have a motion adopting local law number 2 of 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Okay. Did street building department wherever. We did.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah. Sure.
I'll second it.
Yep, so this is a motion accepting the resignation of Tracy Jenner as village clerk effective June 30th of 2025 for purposes of retirement. There's probably no better reason for it. Tracy, I hope we have you for as long as you do and take in what you can from you while you're still here. I think this is going to be a couple of months of thanking you for years and probably decades of service. Thank you, Tracy. So begrudgingly, we accept it, mostly, always.
Aye.
Yeah, I certainly was trying to get her to hold out for a little bit longer, but
Yeah, but you didn't open your pocketbook.
Well, we're trying,
Okay.
but you can't replace 30 years of service to the village. You know, I remember when Tracy started, I think she was like 17, 18 years old. You know, starting here and been here since. That's something you can't replace. You know, the experience, the knowledge, you just can't replace it. And we will miss you tremendously. Hopefully you can stay on us a little bit longer. You know, we send you this motion, but you certainly have the right to retire. You put your time in, so we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Motion increasing Jessica Collider's hourly rate by 50 cents for the agreement when hired effective June 11, 2025.
Second.
All in favor? Motion authorizing myself to, can I have a motion authorizing myself to sign the environmental review document for the Ellenville Housing Authority's conversion?
Move it.
Second.
All in favor? Motion authorizing mayor to sign software agreement for utility billing and payment proposal with First Bank Consulting Group.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? This is for water and sewer that will allow us to have an online portal so you can pay. This will integrate water and sewer directly into our accounting software. Right now, they're operating on 2 different systems. So this will allow direct integration going forward. And again, convenient pay structure, because frankly, I think a lot of the reason why people don't pay is because writes checks and he pays in cash in person or by mail anymore. Motion setting, can I have a motion setting a public hearing on April 28th at 6:30 to discuss the 2025-2026 village budget?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The environmental reviews, for the VHA conversion, it's being converted to.
Sure, so I want to say actually just about 18 months ago, Ellenville Housing Authority has changed. It's section 8 to section 9 or section 9 to section 8. They've been before the board a few times. Functionally, what it allows them to do is they can operate their collective property mass as LLCs. It changes the reimbursement process. So right now it's a voucher, I believe, based on the unit, whereas now it'll be based on the person. You know, basically it allows them to leverage their assets and make capital improvements to the property, and a more direct reimbursement cycle from the federal government.
Thank you.
Board report?
I have one. On April 22nd, signing is at 5:45. Presentation from 6 to 7 at 14 Market Street, which is Paul Valinsky's studio, concerning the Shadowlands doing in conjunction with coffee. It's about the Ulster County Arts and Culture Plan, Imagine Ulster. It's important. There's several Zoom sites that are available, but I know in the last meeting they said that the majority of the people that were there were from the Ellenville area. So you know, it's an area where they can find out more about it, and it helps bring in money and things to the community. So hopefully everybody can go out and participate. That's it. Susan?
The only thing I want to say, it was wonderful and inspiring to go to the art exhibition of the art students that they had at the reception. And it was just really, you know, inspirational, just the beginning of what they had. And, but the only comment, it was great that they were all female, but hopefully we might get some male artists to show up. But it was excellent, and whoever came, I'm sure that they found it very lovely with it.
I don't have anything.
Yeah, spring has finally come. You know, this is probably the best time of the year in Ellenville. I would encourage you to take advantage of so many of the different things that are going on in our community. I know these are really difficult things to talk about, very frustrating things to talk about. And, one of the biggest fears that I have is that it overshadows so many of the good things that are going on in this community by many of our community organizations, many of our different constituents. So, please take advantage of the things that go on in this village. I think people don't appreciate how things do happen compared to so many other places. So, get out, enjoy the weather. It's a great time to be in Ellenville. I got to adjourn. So that's interactive. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming in. Thanks.
I put, I never.
I know what I'm saying.
I know, and I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
No, thank you.
I am very bad. So I'm actually. You're my.
So they do, truthfully, my voice is definitely below what normal is, but at the same time, too, I wanna, this is one of the things. Not the lights for something like this, you need a directional light that can project it.
Also,
I don't disagree. You would be amazed how many people sit in the back.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Sorry.
So that the person.
I'll get to know you tomorrow.
Little things like that, and it's like, what am I here for? I can't hear.
I apologize. I need to.
But I really putting a lot of effort. I think it needs to be addressed.
Oh, you're probably. Oh, yeah, no.
Not good. Let me put it like that. It's not good.
I'm playing down there. If you want to.